All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. We're so glad that you could join us. We have a great panel today, and we're excited to be able to talk with you about um, where education meets workforce aligned skills and the power of industry certification. So welcome again. I'm Heather Sherburne, and I'm the academic officer for School Day Academy. I'm a lifelong educator who has recently retired from being the assistant superintendent of curriculum instruction and technology for a school district in California. And I'm really happy that you've joined us today for this important conversation. So before I introduce our panelists, I want to start with a little bit of a reality check from our opinion here at School Day. We think that the workforce our students are graduating into is fundamentally different from the one schools were designed for even just 10 years ago. And as you well know, automation and AI aren't future trends, they're our current forces, and they're already shaping how work gets done and how hiring decisions are made. And as the reality of the workforce changes, we want to make sure that the leaders of CTE programs like yourselves are made aware that employers are no longer using degrees as the primary screening tool. They're now really looking at skills, and not just self-reported skills, but verified third-party validation. So for high school students, this is both a challenge and an opportunity. Traditional transcripts list the courses and grades, but they don't clearly answer the employer's core question: can this student do the job? And that's where industry certifications come in, and that's what we want to talk about today. So this begs the question: if skills are the new hiring currency, are our systems providing students something that employers will recognize? So I'd like to introduce our two panelists for today's conversation. Maria is a customer success associate at Coursera, our school day partner, and she has been instrumental in assisting us. She has great expertise in the area of industry certifications and the value that they bring to learners. And she's passionate about bridging the skills gap using digital certifications. So welcome, Maria. Thanks for being here. And then we're also joined by David Leeser, the Vice President of My Inner Genius, which is a career success platform used by districts and employers across the country to help students find careers they're passionate about, rather than just something they're suited to. David is also a former IBM executive, an author, a keynote speaker, and one of the leading voices in skills-based training. So welcome, David, and thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's talk about why industry certifications matter right now and why the certifications are gaining traction so quickly, especially in digital and technical fields. Certifications function kind of like a common language between education and industry to tell employers this student meets a standard. They've demonstrated specific competencies aligned to the real job tasks. And for high school students, this is powerful because certifications can help reduce the ambiguity in hiring decisions. They can level the playing field for students, and they can offer credibility that goes beyond a GPA. So, David, talk to us a bit about how certifications provide clear evidence of student capability more than traditional coursework does.
Well, I think there's a couple things to know, and I think that so I actually developed the first IT certificate programs in the IT industry, and Maria, you probably know that because we brought them over to Coursera from IBM, and they were at IBM. But I think one of the things that is really top of mind for me, well, there's two things. One is increasingly. A college degree is not necessarily the passport to a good job. And in the world of AI, that is becoming increasingly true. I mean, when you think about it, electricians, industrial electricians, people who are going to be working on different types of nuclear systems or energy systems are going to be, at a premium. And so they need some sort of proxy for a college degree, and therefore they need a certification. I think the second thing is that I think I read a study recently that said that 80% of students coming out of high school think that they're qualified for the workforce. 36% of employers do, right? So, a resume is not going to quite do it. You need to have some sort of trust, some sort of proof, some sort of way to validate that you have these capabilities. And I think that the new breed of trusted certificates and certifications are the way to do it.
Awesome. Thank you. And Maria, Google has created a lot of courses along with other employers that have these certifications available through Coursera and School Day. So tell us, what is the value that Google and IBM and Meta, all these other really powerful companies, what's the value that they see in these kinds of certifications, and how do they help reduce the ambiguity for them?
Yeah, that's a great question, because this is exactly why companies like Google, IBM, and all these industry partners invest in certifications in the first place, right? Because hiring managers are constantly asking, can this candidate actually do the work on day one? And sometimes, and usually a resume or a transcript doesn't always answer that, especially for early career or highly skilled talent. So for companies like Google, these certifications are built around real job tasks, as David was mentioning, and validated by their hiring teams. So when a manager sees that credential, they understand what was taught, how it was assessed, and how it aligns with the actual roles. So answering your question, certifications reduce that uncertainty by proving standardized job relevant proof of skills, right? So in fact, the Coursera's micro-credential impact report shows that 96% of employers say micro-credential strengthens a candidate job application, which I think it is a really high number, right? And statistic. So
It is.
in this fast-changing labor market that we're facing today, that kind of clear, verifiable signal is incredibly valuable for employers.
Can I add to what Maria just said too? Because you said something
Please.
very important, and that was the changing nature of jobs. And so, in order to stay really relevant in the workforce and to be competitive and to differentiate yourself, you have to constantly be learning, and you have to constantly show proof that you have the latest and greatest skills. And when it comes to technology skills, they're rotating so quickly that you're going to need to do that more often. So we did a project with Northeastern University where we were trying to differentiate Northeastern graduates from everybody else. Well, we decided if we took their degree, which has great credibility, but we
Mhm.
layered on top of it the immediacy of a cybersecurity certificate or a data engineer badge or something like that, they were able to really go out in the market and get jobs, get placement much faster.
Wow, that's just remarkable. So one thing is clear that CTE programs are growing and districts are really stepping up their game trying to meet this challenge. So let's talk a little bit about why and how, because we don't think that districts are expanding CTE programs by accident. They're responding to the evidence that's out there. And when we look at data, just like you were mentioning, David, we see that students who participate deeply in CTE, especially in structured pathways, are seeing better outcomes across the board. They have higher graduation rates, they have stronger post-secondary persistence, and clearer transitions into careers. So what's different now is how CTE is being designed, and the fastest growing programs are those that are tied to these certification aligned pathways, where instruction, assessment, and credentials are all pointing toward that defined workforce outcome. So for districts, certifications can offer something incredibly valuable, and it's a measured return on investment. It allows leaders to track not just participation, but a tangible outcome that students can carry with them beyond their graduation. So, David, what do you see really driving that surge in the certification aligned CTE pathways?
Well, first of all, there's really good data. There's a new article that just came out in the Washington Post that said for the first time, I don't know if it's the first time ever and the first time in years, um, these types of roles, the CTE type of roles, have now flipped with college degrees. And the unemployment rate for people coming out with these CTE certificates have a higher employment rate than college graduates. That was the first time in 2025. So there's an article, if you Google it, you'll find it's in the Washington Post that goes into detail about it. I think that, again, I think that we had a real shift in the 1990s, and it was under President Clinton that said, you know what, we want everybody to have a college degree. That was the big push in the 1990s in the United States. And it became really the driver for pathways in every area. That has shifted because of the labor market and because of the demand. Like, for example, in cybersecurity, there's a 10-to-1 problem with college graduates. There are 10 times as many jobs as there are college graduates. The college system can pump out about 50,000 cybersecurity graduates in a year, but there are 500,000 open recs. So what are you going to do about that? And that was the problem. That's why we created the certificate program at IBM in the first place. It was purely based on revenue. We needed to make sure that our clients had people that had these cybersecurity skills, or we couldn't sell our products. So we came out with, we said, what can we do? Can we come up with a qualified program that will allow people to get the same skills? And do we even need a college degree? We started looking at it. We found that at least 40 or 50% of the jobs at IBM did not require a college degree. And today, 1 in 5 new hires does not have a college degree. Now, that was unheard of when I went there. In fact, I went to graduate school. We just mentioned that I went to graduate school at USC. That was kind of like the low bar to get into IBM, was a place like the University of Southern California, believe it or not. But now it's like, what do we need that for? And so what is driving it is, A, there is a demand for some of these roles that the college system cannot produce. And 2, we're realizing that we don't need a college degree for a lot of these things. And 3, back to what Maria said, if you're going to go for the technical aspect of it, these things are changing so quickly, the college system can't keep up.
Right, right. That's really important for us to remember. So Maria, we see that student outcomes improve with these certifications as well. The impact becomes personal for these students who, in particular, have been historically underserved by traditional systems. The certifications are powerful because they accelerate the confidence and momentum of these students after high school. They provide early wage advantages to careers they haven't been able to have, particularly if they're in an underserved community. And they increase post-secondary participation, which is really amazing when we're talking about it as college or certifications as if they're mutually exclusive. And really, they can be of both. So one important aspect here is portability, and certifications don't expire at graduation. They travel with students. They give students options, like starting college with a head start, or apprenticeships are now available with a proof of readiness, or entry-level employment with immediate credibility. So Maria, can you talk to us more about how do certifications change the trajectory for students when they're entering college or apprenticeships or the workforce?
Yeah, sure. I think that they change the trajectory by giving students like momentum, a lot of options, but also credibility at a critical transition point after high school, right? And instead of living with only a transcript, students graduate with these verifiable skills, which help them move forward with a lot of confidence, which I think it's key when you're starting your career, right? So for a student entering college, certifications act as they reinforce academic readiness, right? And we have seen also that in some cases, these certificates are counting towards credit, which I think it's great, right? Some of them are also like proved by for the academic credit institution. So I think that point counts a lot and in the decision, right? And for students entering the workforce, as we were mentioning previously, this certification reduces hiring uncertainty by validating skills against the real employer standards. So I think this will translating into a faster hiring and early wage advantages. So, and another point that you will mention is portability. Like I think that that portability will give students flexibility and keeps door open as their careers and goals evolve. And I think that when you mention that part of for those unserved students, I think that it is very powerful because these certifications act as equalizers, right? They provide a clear employer recognized signal that doesn't depend on personal networks or prior exposure. So I think that is a really, really important point to mention also.
Awesome.
Can I make a point
David.
on that too? Can I add to that too? So I have a little bit of a story to tell, if it's okay. It was about a young man named Damani, And Damani was born in a very, very poor part of the United States in poverty. His mother died when he was 5 years old, and his dad died of cancer, and his dad died in a car accident when he was 7. So he moved in with his grandmother into a multi-generational project. It was government subsidized housing. He went to high school, and he did very well in high school. But when he graduated, he thought his ticket out of poverty was going to be retail. He got a job working in retail, but he found out about this apprenticeship program that we had sponsored. He had to take the assessment, the Minor Genius assessment, to find out what path he should take. He took the assessment and he checked the boxes for about 4 or 5 major roles: AWS, cloud architect, mainframe administrator. He just checked the boxes for all these things. He said nobody ever told him that he could do those things. Nobody ever told him that he could, be a mainframe administrator or he could be a cybersecurity professional. He went through the apprenticeship. He didn't have a lot of confidence in it, but he remembered that the assessment told him, hey, you know what, you're qualified to do this. Bottom line was this: 6 months later, he got a job offer for $82,000. He continued getting more certifications. He was AWS certified after that. And 7 more months passed by. So he's 13 months into it. He gets 2 job offers, one for $132,000, one for $135,000. He now is generationally out of poverty. He moved out of the projects. He bought a condo. He got married. He brought his brother out of the projects and is mentoring him. And I just feel like the people on this call, what if we could move that back to 13 years old or 14 years old? What if we could move that back into high school, where these kids could find out what they're born to do, what they're going to find meaningful in their lives, and then put them on the pathway, get them into some of these Coursera programs before they graduate. They can get a certificate, and then they can decide, do I want to stay with the CTE type of pathway? Do I want to go to college? Do I want to start my own business? What do I want to do? But there's so many opportunities that are missed, and so many kids end up like Damani, working in a job that doesn't really fit their skills and their passions.
Yeah, such a good point. Thanks so much for sharing that. One misconception that I often hear is that certifications really only matter for tech jobs, which is what you were just referencing there, were tech-related things. But in reality, AI is really reshaping every sector, including skilled trades. AI-driven infrastructure like data centers, automation, electricity, they all require skilled human labor. And that means that electricians, HVAC technicians, mechanics, logistics specialists, they're all seeing increased demand as well because of what's going on with AI. And these roles now require digital fluency and systems thinking and safety compliance. All areas where certifications can really help validate readiness. So, isn't really true that certifications just aren't for IT, and how are they relevant across every CTE sector, from things like construction to healthcare to manufacturing? So, David, could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, obviously technology, it's not just technology anymore. If you go to get your oil changed in your car, they're using a CRM system, right? And if you're, marketing is no longer about, creative design. It's really about social media. It's about all these other different types of things. So you're absolutely right that there's a blurred line now between technology and what we used to think of as blue collar jobs. Everything is influenced by technology because everything's going to have some sort of either AI or robotic process automation built into it. Some things that have RPA. We think that the people in the agriculture industry are out there picking lettuce or picking strawberries. They're not. They're managing machines that actually do that. They're not actually out there walking along the fields. They're in sophisticated machines, or they're managing systems to do that. And that's true with all of this. And we mentioned that with the electricians and the HVAC, because the data centers are going to be exploding in the United States, and the roles for those jobs. I mean, I read a thing recently that said that we should expect electricians to be $300,000 jobs in the next 5 to 10 years. So these are escalating, especially the industrial electricians, right, that can work on data centers. I think there's a thing missing here, though, because we talk about the technology, But if you look at the top list of what employers want, it is those durable, transferable skills. They want people that have creative thinking, people that have stress tolerance, that have communication skills, that have collaboration skills, problem solving skills. So I think that if we could get back into that in the high school system and in the early college system and show demonstrations of that and certify that, I think that goes a long way, because a lot of these technologies are changing every 6 months, every 18 months. Prompt engineers that job will go away in the next year or two, right? But
Yeah,
all these core human skills are needed to run the machines.
that's right. That's right. Maria, what can you add to this, especially given that everything is changing so quickly?
Yeah. I think that David's point is it's critical, but I think also that we see here in Coursera, and also going back to our different reports, according to our job skills report from 2026 shows that the demand for these certificates is rising across all career areas, right? Not just IT. And I think that when a school adapts or embeds those certificates, as David well mentioned, they're not just preparing students for today's jobs; they're preparing it for them to adapt as roles evolve, and that's really what employers are looking like: people that can adapt and all those human skills that David was mentioning. So yeah.
Thank you. So, one of the issues that comes up, and David, you referenced this a little bit earlier, is that students overwhelmingly believe that they're prepared, and employers overwhelmingly disagree, and that gap can create some frustration on both sides, and can leave students blindsided when they graduate and they're looking for their careers. So, David, can you tell us more about these readiness gaps and how districts can use certifications to help?
Well, in a couple of ways. And by the way, I mentioned the 80-36, but there was a study that showed that 91% of employers think that the college system is not producing what they want, right? So I think that the high school system can start to prepare again by showing proof or evidence that students have these types of capabilities. And what is that evidence going to look like, right? Well, the first thing you need to do is you have to evaluate the students to determine what they have and what they need, right? And then start to develop them. But again, overwhelmingly, they're going to want those transferable skills as an anchor for everything. So you have to focus on those transferable skills. If people have critical thinking skills and problem solving skills, and you can demonstrate it in a project or something else, help them build a portfolio of capabilities. Get them into sandboxes, get them doing these things early. Then they're going to be ready for the workforce. Employers do not want to train their employees. And I remember even 5 or 6 years ago, I was in Barcelona at a conference, and people were saying, well, the employers are just going to have to step up their game, and they're just going to have to start to train people to fit their jobs. They're not going to do it. They will not do that. They're going to expect employees to come in with the skills they have. In fact, the former CHRO of IBM said she predicts that in the IT world, and that's probably most of the corporate world, right? 70% of the employees will be contract workers. They won't actually have a direct W-2 from the employer. They'll be contracted in and out. And there are tremendous opportunities for contract workers today. And by the way, that gives students flexibility. If they want to be their own boss, they can be a contract worker, and they can work for a company like Deloitte or work for, an energy sector company or something else. So help them build those portfolios is what I would say.
Thank you. Maria, anything to add?
Yeah, I think that it all comes like the readiness gap comes down to perception versus proof, right? And many students feel prepared to enter the workforce, but employers don't always see that clear evidence that they can perform that task. And that disconnection, I think that creates a lot of frustration and often surprises students after graduation. So I think that how the certificates or certifications help here is they act as a shared language between education and industry by clearly signaling what skills were learned. So I think it is key to embed certifications directly into pathways and align them to local workforce demands and using them as a milestone before graduation.
Hey, and I don't
Great.
want to pitch, I'm not just here to pitch Coursera, but what Coursera has done is it has said, we're going out to industry and we're going to find out what are the skills and capabilities that they're going to ask for. Can they create the content, the courseware? And they'll do that, right? They'll create the courseware and the content, host it up on Coursera. So if you took one of the courses that was sponsored by one of these big industry leaders, chances are really high it's going to align very tightly with what they need in the organization, because those courses are developed by their subject matter experts.
Yeah, you're correct,
right.
David. And we are basing all our content development in a career graph that's basically mapping those specific skills for each job and finding the perfect content that will teach those skills. So yeah, that's our philosophy, and that's how we that's how we work here with our content partners.
Thank you. And we have some district success stories and models that have come to our attention that are really a celebration and an example that are showing success. And it's because districts make these intentional structural decisions that they are successful. They embed their certification preparation into the master schedule. They make sure that they have clear course pacing. They make it about instructional practice and not just an after school remediation kind of opportunity. And they invest in their teachers, ensuring that educators are trained, supported, given time to align their instruction with the certification outcome. But their models are really scalable. They're not just one-off boutique kinds of programs. They're system-level strategies that can be replicated in other districts with the right leadership commitment. So, Maria, what can you tell us more about lessons that districts can learn from, in particular, high school systems that are starting, these success stories that have really adopted these certifications and embedded them into their CTE programs?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think that success comes when certifications are treated as a strategic system-wide priority, right? And they don't treat them as an isolated program. So I think what matters most here, and what I have seen with high schools that adopt this like strategy, is alignment, right, between curriculum, instructions, and outcomes. And students know what they're working towards, and educators know how skills connect to real jobs, and leaders can track progress using clear data. So I think that strong districts can also treat certifications as they need to treat certifications as core performance indicators, not as an optional extra. And that shares accountability and keeps effort focused and sustainable. So I think that, in short, answering your question is when the certifications are treated as strategic and as a system-wide priority, knowing all the impact that it will have in the students.
Thank you. David, anything to add?
Well, I just want to add something just slightly different, and it's something that is never really shows up on a chart, and that's confidence. I remember when we created the digital credential program at IBM, I was really proud of people that got all these digital credentials, and we had a woman who couldn't find a job. She had a high school degree, and she had had work experience, but she was having a really hard time finding one. Well, she took a number of these different courses. She got her credentials from them, and she ended up getting a job within like 6 weeks. So she'd been trying to get a job for like a year, right? And she got a job within 6 weeks. So I was all proud of our credentials. I was all proud that, hey, guess what? You got this IBM big data, credential. And she says, no, that wasn't it. She said, it was the confidence I had for having that. She said, I didn't feel like I was going into an employer and asking for a job. She felt like I was exchanging my skills for what they want. They'll give me money for me giving them something else. She says, so I felt like I was on level playing field because I had confidence with all the credentials I had. I felt like, you know what? I'm going to exchange what I have for something that they have. And she said it totally changed her because she was in there basically, brother, can you spare a dime in a way, And now it was like, no, I have confidence. And we found that, and I don't know if you found the same thing, Maria, but we found that if we kept really good descriptions in our credentials, in the metadata, in the description, and that's very important that the metadata is good in these credentials. We found that students started to describe themselves based on that description. They would use the description in that to say these are the kids. Because again, back to the whole things about, you know, I have problem solving capabilities, I have collaboration skills, I have all these. People don't usually describe themselves. People either under or over report their capabilities. And women, by the way, and minorities typically underreport their capabilities. In fact, there was a study that was done that showed that when you looked at 10 qualifications for a job, men would go for the job and apply for it if they had 4 of those, right? Women, it would be 6 or 8, right?
Wow.
They felt like they had to have all the thing, every checked off before they'd even apply for it. So don't underestimate the value of the confidence that building up these digital portfolios and digital resumes is going to make on the students.
Great. That's such an important point. I mean, imagine if all our high schoolers were able to leave high school feeling that kind of confidence for whatever their next steps were. So this is really great food for thought. What can districts do right now? We don't think they need to start from scratch. They can evaluate their existing programs and then start taking these next steps. Maria, what do you think the most critical next steps are that districts should be taking to think about all of the information we've been sharing?
Yeah, I think that like in the next 6 and 12 months, it's really about like focus and alignment and building a strong foundation for long-term impact, right? And sometimes like they see it as an impossible process, but I think it is as you mentioned, first, districts do not need to start from scratch. So I think that the smartest move to start adapting and adopting this approach is assessing what they already have in place, right? And where certification exists, which pathways align to the local labor market demand, and where students are already gaining traction, right? And also from there, I think that the next step is like focus rather than launching too many initiatives and like covering a lot of those certificates. I think that districts should prioritize a small number of high value certifications and build depth in those areas, because you will find a lot, and even in Coursera we have tons of professional certificates, but I think that districts should need to focus and start with those high value and high demand certifications as a starting point, right? And then I think that it is alignment, like instruction, pacing, and assessment should clearly map to certification competencies. So preparation is embedded into the learning experience, not only at the end. So really embed all the knowledge and steps into those pathways.
Wow.
And as you mentioned, yeah, and as you also mentioned, I think that it is key. And from what I have seen, is invest in teacher support. And when educators are equipped and progress is visible, scaling becomes sustainable, because at the end, the teachers are the ones that are going to promote and also touch these, I don't know, topics and stuff in classes. So I think it's key for them like to have some support, but also to be like training the importance of doing this integration of certificates into their curriculum and classes.
Thank you. David?
Well, you know, Marie, I'm going to capture one of the things you talked about, and that was the commerce side of it. And I think we often start at the wrong end of the thing. Of course, we want well-rounded students, and that's the goal of high school, right? But we have to also start to think about the consumer on the back end, and that is employment or something for the student when they leave the place. So what is this all in service of, right? This is all in service of that. And so I think that you really have to start with that. And like your first bullet point's perfect, you know, start with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, find out what are the jobs that are, you know, research, join LinkedIn groups, find out what are the jobs that are most in demand nationally or regionally. Work with your local commerce areas, work with your Chamber of Commerce, work with the economic development boards. And figure out, because a lot of students, you know, you want to keep the talent in-house or in the town, right? We don't want people to have to say, oh, I have to move from Florida to Michigan to get a job, right? But are there jobs that are emerging in this particular area? Can we start to fulfill that demand in this particular area? And what's it going to take from an employer perspective to get the training and the skills that they need to do that job. So I think you have to start at the end, not at the beginning. You have to start at, what's this in service of? Who's the employer?
Thank you. So School Day Academy is powered by Coursera. And as you see here, the CTE pathways in our program are created by the industry experts like Google, IBM, Adobe, MetaCerts, PACT. It's just amazing, these valuable employer recognized certifications that we have inside of the School Day Academy offerings that are powered by Coursera. Um, David, why do you really think why these big name companies like Google, IBM, Microsoft are really choosing to offer these pathways and like double down into helping bring qualified uh, certifications to the masses out there? Why are they making this investment?
Well, I mean, the companies are driven by revenue, and that's the bottom line. And that's what they should be driven by. They're driven by what their stockholders want. And if they can't produce a stock increase, they're going to lose their jobs. Most companies don't look past the next quarter. They just simply don't, right? But in this case, what they are doing is they're realizing that in order for them to stay relevant, to stay competitive, and to grow their markets, they need to have people that can run their machines, that can run their software. And there's not enough coming out of the college system to make it happen. We talked about the cybersecurity gap. The same thing's true for all of these different things. And frankly, in some of them, like the Adobe capabilities, most of those capabilities don't require a college degree. Same thing with Google. Most of them do not require a college degree. So they're doing a smart thing. They're saying, we will put our subject matter experts on this. We'll help develop the content. We'd like Coursera and School Day to host up that content. And that way we have a talent pool out there that can run our software. We at IBM, we had a problem with mainframe. You know, the mainframe administrators were aging out, frankly. You know, these machines have been around for a long time. And guess what? With cloud, mainframe all of a sudden got a second breath of life. Everybody needs a mainframe to run all these cloud systems. So what do? Because they're not coming out of the college system, we had to create a mainframe apprenticeship program. It was wildly successful. It fulfilled all of the requirements to do this, and allows somebody to get a really good job that they love in a very short amount of time. So
Yeah, so it's
it's
not
it's not as
altruistic,
noble
it's
as it may sound, but it
convenient.
is what it is, right?
Right, right. Awesome. So when we think about School Day Academy, we're really proud of our K-12 partnership with Coursera, which is exclusive to School Day Academy. And we offer over 60 pathways. Even more though, School Day protects your student and staff data because of the data sovereignty that we have, that we can offer to our K-12 districts. And we believe that's really important, especially as you're out there working in the world of apps and having your students use things. That data sovereignty is critical. So additionally, we provide LMS integration, professional development for CTE teachers, fast onboarding, and we have the included career assessment from My Inner Genius to help make sure that students are finding careers that they're passionate about, rather than just things that they're suited to. So we have David to thank for that relationship there. So we want to invite you to explore our website at schoolday.academy and to browse the CTE pathways that we have. We have options in tech and business and marketing, real estate, service industries, and more. So I want to encourage you to look at that full list online. And there's over 9,000 courses. And we can also help build custom pathways if you'd like, along with over 20 industry certifications that are included. So it gives just a real great snapshot of just how many directions that students can go. On our website, you'll also see that School Day Academy offers professional development that goes way beyond CTE. Our PD library is built for teachers, school leaders, your IT teams, your business office staff, really anyone in a district who wants to keep growing. The idea is that we want to help schools create a true lifelong learning culture by giving staff access to on-demand, high-quality courses that they can take anytime, anywhere. The PD is hands-on, It's practical, and it's designed to support real job skills. It's an easy way for districts to invest in their people and show that professional learning doesn't have to be one size fits all. So I want to thank Maria and David for their insights today and invite you to start your 30-day free trial of School Day Academy, the exclusive K-12 partner of Coursera with discounted K-12 education pricing that is more than 60% off of the list price. And Bushra, do we have any questions? We have a few minutes left.
While you're waiting, one other thing that I think is really important about the academy here is opening up people's eyes to the possibilities. They say that there are 40,000 jobs in the world, right? The average student can probably name about 10, right? And you just mentioned 9,000 different courses up there. So
Right.
imagine how this could open up people's eyes to the possibilities of jobs that didn't even know existed and that they're capable of achieving.
All right. So we have a question from the audience that says, do we have a list of certifications that you have seen high schools used that are not particularly tied to skills classes? Maria, I'll ask you if you have any information around that.
Well, I think it depends a lot on the interest, but yeah, we can follow up with that and see how we can make that type of information accessible in the School Day Academy, like for them to take better decisions, right? Like other example or use cases.
Right, right. Yeah, I don't have a list right off of the top of my head, but we do have high schools that have been using the pathways and integrating them in, particularly in a blended learning format, to go along with the pathways that they have developed and have students come out with certifications. And those are also really helpful for them to be able to apply for internships. And that's another thing that School Day Academy offers. We have an internship in the IT field, and we think that students who come out with certifications are a whole lot more enticing to businesses to host as interns. So that's a win-win situation. All right. And with that, our time is up. I want to thank Maria and David again so much and invite all of you to check out schoolday.academy. And if there are any other questions or things that I can help you with, please let us know. Thank you. Have a great day.